Hey everybody, welcome to Instructional Strategies for Teaching Online. We're glad to have you here today.
As people are coming into the meet, we are going to drop some info in. If you do not have a Flipgrid created, we'd love for you to take this time to create a Flipgrid, as we will be using it later on. So creating a Flipgrid account if you don't have one yet.
Hey everybody, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're excited to do this presentation for you and learn alongside you today.
We're going to get started in a minute here. Instructional strategies for teaching online. Again, if you don't have a Flipgrid account created yet, we'd love it if you could really quick create a Flipgrid account.
Hey everybody, welcome to Instructional Strategies for Teaching Online. And shortly we will put our link to the presentation in the chat. So there are some links in the presentation that we'll ask you to participate in during the presentation. So you'll want to have that information as well. All right, Jess, I think we're ready to kick this off.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. Welcome, everybody. My name is Deb and Jessica, and I currently work at our district office at Stillwater Area Schools in Stillwater, Minnesota. I'm also an open national trainer, and I'm on our MinShape Board of Directors representing health. So again, welcome. We're glad you're here, and we're looking forward to a great time together.
And I am Jessica Matheson. I'm a health, physical education, and avid teacher at Rockford High School in Rockford, Minnesota. And I am the MinShape Health Teacher of the Year. If you would mind, take a moment in the chat. Can you introduce yourself as well? With us being from Minnesota, we don't know if you've got a little lingo with your school name. Just let us know where you're from. We'd love to hear it.
All right, while you're doing that, we're going to talk a little bit about how the flow of the presentation is going to go today. We're focusing on 4 areas. The first one is engagement by design. We know that design is really important if we're trying to get the outcomes that we want for student achievement. Second one is authentic relationships. We know that without relationships with our kiddos, I'm kind of speaking to the choir here, it's difficult to get kids into the space and want to learn. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The third one is student engagement. We know that it's definitely the strength of what we do in our classrooms and the focus on the whole child. And the last one is vigorous instruction. And we talk about vigorous instead of rigorous just because vigor is full of life and rigor is pretty morbid and straight. So those are the 4 areas we're going to talk about today. We know that, in creating that online space where you and students come together and you really have your craft and you're trying to connect it with kids in relationship. And this has been something that I'm sure has been a real challenge for you as you're moving from one learning model to another. Our teachers have been in hybrid to distance learning, back to hybrid, and now they're going full-time face-to-face. So it's been a lot of shifting, a lot of flexibility, and I just applaud you for being flexible and doing what's right by kids. All right, we're going to kick off this first section here and really talking about engagement by design. And think about, how are you designing your learning experiences and providing students that opportunity to learn? We know that as we're planning, we have to be intentional. What does our success criteria look like? What is that backward design piece of where we want kids to be and how do we get them there? So we'll talk about some ideas to consider as you're planning your lessons and your curriculum. A lot of this work comes from Doug Fisher, Nancy Fry, and John Hattie, throwing out those big names out there. But I really want to focus on the three areas around relationships, the challenge, and the clarity. We know that all of this has true intersectionality in everything that you're doing. We know that with clarity, you're providing learning targets and your success criteria. It's important that students know where they're going and how they're going to get there. The challenge of really engaging the students and having those authentic relationships with teachers and teachers who know their content and make sure that the learning is relevant, relational, and just real rich. So all of these pieces come together and it really underlies with trust and respect, optimism that serve all, see all, support all students is really, really important. And again, going back to that intentionality of everything that you do matters. One of the things we talked about as we were planning our distance learning in our school district was really that distance learning doesn't need to be disastrous. And what we would like you to do is really answer this question in the chat. What instructional strategies can we use to foster the vein of gold that exists in all of our learners? As physical education and health teachers, we are the masters at SEL, I feel. So what are some things that you have done? If you would just share those in the chat, because you are the experts in the field. So think about what tools and resources have you used? Is there something you've done specifically with your students that has worked really, really well? What kind of learning goals do you have, and all those pieces. So again, if you can just put those instructional strategies in the chat, that would be great. One of the things we talked about as we were developing, online courses and working with our teachers and providing professional development, we really wanted to be able to create content that was really nimble so that, we knew that we would be moving from in-person to hybrid and distance and back and forth. And we've experienced that. And that has been a real challenge. But again, as teachers, I know we've risen to that level of getting that done. And how do we provide that equitable experience for our kids and supporting our kids by providing the consistency that they need? That's really, really, really important. So we talk a little bit as you're developing those lessons and that structure in your online course, how can you make sure it's consistent and very clear by your students? And probably one of the most important things we learned was student feedback, checking in with kids on that weekly basis as to how's it going? What do you need? And I know Jess will be able to share some of that specifics a little later, but we really wanted to bring that student voice to the space because that's who we're serving.
So it's relationships. I think this is what holds together a health class. You've got to make it so the students feel like they're loved, feel like they belong, and create an environment that students feel welcome in and will want to share in. So here we're going to work on how we would establish relationships in a distance learning environment. When we started our presentation today, we started with a walk-up song. We started with Audrey Day, Rise Up. I explained to my students that I think that this is perfect for this school year. We're being dealt with some hardships, but we've got to do it and we've got to rise up. So that's my walk song that I play for my students. And I ask my students, what's your walk-up song? I do this on the first day of class, and it's really fun that it gives me a chance to get to know the student through music as well. So in the chat, if you had to choose a walk-up song for yourself, what would it be? We'd love to know. Different ways that we can build community through authentic relationships. So if you are in a hybrid or an all distance situation, you are most likely going through Zoom or Meet, maybe WebEx. We have 2 resources here for you, a connection toolkit and 15 ways to virtually meet. Some ways that I've used Zoom and Google Meets to connect with students is during distance learning, I've hosted Google Meets just to have an open conversation. During lunch, we've played Kahoots, we've made friendship bracelets, we had a college football lunch talk. It's just a great way to have students be able to come to environments where nothing's expected of them, where they don't have to learn, or it can just be a time where we can get to know each other and have some fun. Google Forms are another great example of something that you can do. We've got 3 examples for you. One of them here, I used it as a health class fall break check-in. So I just asked the students how things are going. I asked them how class is going, if they're getting enough sleep, what things that I can do in class that they would like to do. So Google Forms can be great for that. It's quick, instant feedback that's easy to organize for the teacher as well. And then Flipgrid. If you haven't used Flipgrid yet, we're going to be using it here in just a second. But a great way for students, you can use it as an intro activity. One suggestion to you, have students pronounce their names for you. That's kind of the dreaded thing of teachers is, oh, how do you pronounce a student's name? You want to get it right. Have them do it for you in a Flipgrid. You've always got that Flipgrid there. So you can check it, you can listen to it, so you can practice that student's name and get it right. That's huge in building relationships. You can use it for a check-in as well. I've used it in my classroom for elevator speeches. I've used it in my classroom for CPR as well. It's great with Flipgrid. You can do a mic only option so they don't have their camera on, or if they have their camera on, there's awesome filters. I've even done it where I've had a little fairy on my shoulder. You can do so much stuff with Flipgrid. So let's practice it.
All right, so in our presentation, it's on slide 11. You'll be able to go to the link here and click on the link. Jess is also going to drop that in the chat for you, so you'll have that there. And we'd like you to choose one of the 3 following questions. 1, how is what you have learned so far in our presentation connected to something you know? Number 2, what new ideas or impressions do you have that extend your thinking in new directions? And number 3, what is challenging or what do you wonder about? So go ahead and choose one of those 3 questions, click on the link on the slide in the Flipgrid or in the chat, and we will look forward to seeing your responses. All right, awesome. Thanks for doing that in the Flipgrid. We're excited to get to see once what you guys have to say. Our third area is student engagement. We know that it's definitely the strength in the classroom is really knowing, are students engaged or are they compliant learners? And how do we develop activities and lessons in which they're student-centered pieces? Jess has some great examples that she's used in her classroom that we're very fortunate that she's going to share out with us. But we also have some strategies that we can use for synchronous communication as well.
So when we're within the classroom, whether it's Google Meet, whether it's in person, really kind of focus on inviting small groups of specific students. So this could be introducing for something that we're doing tomorrow. Hey, tomorrow we're going to be doing this. I'd love it if you could contribute. You can use breakout rooms if that's an option that your school has. I've personally found that when I'm using breakout rooms, my screen is all black with the little icons for a Google Meet school when I'm talking. But when students come back from the breakout rooms, all their cameras are on and everything. I kind of get a little jealous, but it makes me feel good that they're comfortable with their classmates opening up in those small groups rather than the large groups. Provide very specific feedback or very specific help as well. I'm very, very, very really cautious about things that I say to my students, asking if they need help, explaining that I'll stay on the meet. If they have any questions, I make sure to have a visual and I make sure to be doing it verbally as well. I provide time for students to come at the end of class during our we call it targeted student support time, or during open office hours as well. You can always reframe that help to feedback, and you can use peers to do it as well. If you're using Google, you can use the comment features on assignments. You can use the private chats within assignments as well. And then you can always do the exit tickets. You can do a virtual meeting, the lunch and learn like I had talked about in the Google Forms as well, just for getting feedback as an educator as well. See what works with your students and be willing to open up and listen to their feedback and maybe try something new.
For the fourth section, we want to talk a little bit about vigorous instruction. And are there things or layouts or templates that we could use to do things a bit differently than maybe we have done in the past? I think that there's one thing that the pandemic has done is it really forced us to do things differently, and it's really shifting the educational paradigm, which I think is good, in my opinion, long overdue. But one of the ways to do that is through hyperdocs. I don't know if you're familiar with hyperdocs or not, but it's a great way for student-led learning. It gives them an opportunity to have some choice in how they want to learn, when they want to learn, and really forces that student-led dialogue, which I think is awesome. And Jess is going to be able to share some of those pieces, but we'll also be able to share with you some resources with just a plethora of, it's overwhelming how much is already out there for you done. And then you can take it and tweak it to fit your classroom. So we're excited to share that with you.
Some good things are coming out of this pandemic right now, and it's transforming our instruction. We're doing things that we've never done before because we're forced to do them. And I personally have enjoyed it. So I've got 4 examples of different ways that I've changed up my instruction this year. And all 4 of these are things that I will continue whenever we return back to normal, or what we know is normal. So the first one is choice boards. So different ways that you can lay choice boards out. This stress management choice board that I have, I let the students just choose. All I ask for them to do is 15 minutes. I say, you can choose 15 minutes of one activity. You can do one activity for 1 minute, and then you can do another one for another and another one for another, and you can do 15 different activities in 15 minutes. It's up to you. So I have all of these examples for students when we're doing stress management, and they can choose whatever they would like to do. Another example of a choice board here is an alcohol choice board. So my end goal for this assignment would be to debate on whether they think the minimum drinking age act should be changed to 19. So how my students get there is totally up to them. So I've got different readings that students can do. I've got different videos that they can do to gain their content knowledge to be prepared for the debate, but I'm letting them choose. They're having some voice and choice within their assignment. Choice boards are great when that end goal is pretty flexible on how you get there. Another example of things, as Deb had mentioned, hyperdocs. So here's a coping with loss and grief hyperdoc that I had created. 3 main categories within this: watch, read, and write. But the students can choose their own path of learning. So they can explore different forms of grief, different forms of loss, and they can do a final end product that works for them. Another example of things that I've been doing in my class are digital interactive notebooks. Full disclosure, they are very time consuming, but these are great for asynchronous learning. This is also how I provide my skeleton notes to students as well. So in it, I've got an overview, the lesson, the assignment, and then any resources as well. It's a one-stop shop for all of our curriculum for the day. And the last one that I want to go over is just interactive activities. However you can think of how you've done an activity in class. For example, this one, we used to have all of these outcomes on different cards, and the students would pick a card. I'm like, okay, well, we can't be sharing materials. We were face-to-face at this, we were hybrid at the time. So I could have tried to manipulate it, but I was like, you know what? I can digitize this. So how I've got it set up is there's a YouTube dice roll. Students will just pause it and then they'll select the outcome. Within the slide deck, it will bring the students to a different unique outcome for each of the 6 options. They'll go through the 10 dimensions of wellness and they'll create a fictional character that will be unlike any other one of their classmates. So it's another way to personalize their learning as well. All of these resources are in the slide deck that we provided at the beginning. And this is a reminder for us. We'll drop the link again for anyone who joined late. But all of these resources are in there for you. I just ask that you make a copy and do what you do with it. Make it your own, put your own spin on it.
All right. So the next thing we want to do, couple of things we wanted, goals that we had as part of this presentation was to provide you resources and ideas on how to really engage kids, and feel that Padlet is a great way. If you don't use Padlet, we want to encourage you to give it a shot. It's a great way, just a quick formative assessment check-in with kids on these pieces. So again, you can click on the link in this slide. We'll drop it in the chat as well. But we'd like you on the Padlet to share something that we've talked about so far that's really squaring with your thinking. It really aligns with your thoughts and what you've been doing so far. And then the next question is, what's still going on in your mind? What's something you're still not sure about, have questions about? Maybe it's one of the instructional strategies that was used, or how we continue to engage kids or assess kids. But what's a question going around in your mind? And then the third one, what's an important point that you want to remember? So, we're really throwing a lot of things out at you, but really want you to just take some time to reflect and consider what squares with your thinking, what's a question still going around in your mind, and what's an important point to remember.
Padlet now. I just wanted to share how I use Padlet in my classes. We'll use it whenever we do a debate now, whenever we're in distance learning or even hybrid. If hybrid is kind of on a switch schedule like we've been doing, I feel like every week now our schedule's changing and students just can't get schedules aligned. I've been using Padlet, where students will first post their original response to whatever issue it is that we are debating, and then they need to respond to at least 2 classmates. I think this is a way that I've been able to hear all of my students' voices that I normally wouldn't be able to in the classroom in a traditional debate. Pros and cons, though, you don't get a lot of the back and forth banter, but it is another way to use Padlet. I also use Padlet to display student work. If we're doing a summative assessment where they're creating a vision board or they're creating a one-pager, they can save it as an image and they can post it on the Padlet. So all of their classmates can see their summative work as well. So just 2 other ways that you can use Padlet in the classroom. So as Deb had previously said, this is a lot. We have a lot of resources for you, but we hope it helps you as well. So if you're not ready to go through them now, we understand. When you're ready, go ahead, take a stab at some of them. On the left-hand side, we've got ready to go curriculum resources. All of these, you could literally just take and assign to your students right away. So we hope that these help you. And then on the right, for your toolkit, we've got so many awesome resources that will help you develop more engaging lessons. One thing that we didn't touch on in here is the Answer Garden. If you don't use Answer Garden, I really suggest that you try it out. Answer Garden is something where you can have students pop in a response to a prompt, to a question that you give them, and it will make a word cloud for you. I love Answer Garden as just kind of an icebreaker at the beginning of a class or how are you feeling today? Answer Garden has really been fun for my students to use as well.
All right, so I think that's a wrap. My contact information is here. Would love to hear from you. Anything we can provide you, we're here as a resource for you. So thank you to North Dakota Shape for the opportunity to share our thoughts and resources with you, and have a great second half of the year, everybody.
Yeah, again, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. You see both of us on Twitter there. You have our email addresses. We want to learn from you too. If you have questions, if you have anything to share, you want to drop them in the chat right now. If you want to shoot us an email, we'd love to hear from you. Or follow us on Twitter. I know I'm posting lesson ideas all the time, and I'd love to hear from you too. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
All right, take care, everybody.